Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 9 of the video series where we're taking a look at On1 Portrait 10. And in this episode, by popular demand, we're taking a look at On1 Portrait. Now, as you could see, I changed it up a little bit in this episode. We're in Photoshop instead of Lightroom. And the reason why I decided to do this from Photoshop, now you could do this just as easily from Lightroom, is I received a question from someone when I did the video on1 Resize. They noticed that in Photoshop, if you look under Filter and you go to On1, Resize isn't there. But On1 claims that you can use On1 Resize as a plugin in Photoshop. Well, it's a little different. For resize, what you need to do is go up to File, Automate, and then you'll have Effects, Enhance, Portrait, and Resize right here. So what's the difference if you're running them from Automate or if you're running them from the Filter menu? Well, if you run them from the Filter menu, you're actually applying the effect as a filter to the layer you have highlighted. So right now, if I run this portrait through On1 Portrait and I use the filter menu, it will open On1 Portrait fine, and I could do everything. But it's when I come back here, it's gonna be on the background layer. So if you're running any of the On1 plugins from the filter menu, I suggest you duplicate the menu or duplicate the layer first. On a Mac, you'd hit Command J. On a PC, you'd hit Control J, and you duplicate the layer. On the other hand, if you just want to go over to the File menu, go down to Automate, and then open up any of the On1 plugins from here, you do not have to duplicate the background layer because it will create a duplicate layer that it will apply the whatever plugin you're using to. So as you can see, I went from the Automate menu and we're in On1 Photo 10 Portrait. Now, it's really, really easy to use. And we're actually going to split this video or this portrait part of the On1 series into two videos. First, we're just going to do one image. And I have this image of my son Joe. And then in the next video, I'll show you how you could do a group of people in On1 Photo 10 Portrait. All right, when you open, you'll come up with this. And On1 Photo 10 will find the face, hopefully right away. And when it does, all you do, it'll have a box around it. And all you have to do is click in the face. And if you could see right here, it actually tells you what to do. And you have Show Guidance On. So we're going to leave guidance on. We're just going to click in the box. And what it will do now is it will ask us up here to get started, click on the center of the left eye. So I always overthink these things and I'm thinking, well, is it my left or is it his left? And actually I've done it both ways and I found it doesn't matter. Although On1 says it's your left. So this would be considered the left eye. So we're going to click right there. And then it says click on the center of the right eye. We're going to click right there. Then on the left corner of the mouth, and we click there, and then it says to click on the right corner of the mouth, and we click there. And then when we're done, we could drag them around if we didn't click perfectly, and then click done. So when we're done, what it does, you'll see these lines come up. And they're kind of like the guidelines for all these effects we're going to be doing to Joe's face. So what we have to do is refine them. You could see the eyes look a little smaller than what the eyes actually are. So all you got to do is drag any of the points to the exact corners of the eye. And I would say take your time and try to do this as exact as possible. Try not to get overlapping on any of his skin. Just try to get all eye along the outline. And you'll find that the adjustments you do will be that much better because you'll be doing them just to the eye and not to his skin. So bear with me 1 second here as I do that. Now the eyes are done. Now the mouth, you can see there's a number of lines. Joe is not smiling, so he's not showing his teeth. So this one we're going to do a little different. First of all, we have the two outside lines, and those will be outlining the outside of the lips. The bottom line is at the bottom of the bottom lip. The top line is at the top of the top lip. and that's fine. Now, these two middle lines, if he was smiling, you would put the top one at the bottom of the top lip so the teeth are below it. Then you'd put this bottom middle line at the top of the bottom lip, right where his teeth begin. So in here would be his teeth. Now, since he's not smiling, we're just going to push all these together into the middle. So it just goes across the middle of his lips, just like that. So that would work on this. Now, hopefully in the next video, I'll have someone smiling and I could show you how to actually do that. And then we just double check that we have the lines the way we like them, and we're done. So we have this adjusted. Now, On1 Photo 10 Portrait already did some adjustments to the image already. If we click on the preview button down here at the bottom, you can see there's before and there's after. Before, after. Well, we're going to adjust it a little bit. First of all, I suggest you adjust the skin area. So On1 Portrait 10 On1 Portrait knows exactly what is skin and what isn't skin. So right here below adjust points, which we just did, we just adjusted the points, we're going to adjust the skin area. And you can see the mask comes on. And by default, the perfect brush is on. And we can leave it on for now. And we're in not skin mode. So what you want to do is you want to come in here and you want to just come up to his hairline, because we don't want any of these softening effects on any of his hair. Now, you can see when you have the perfect brush on, it's kind of, it isn't as solid. You can see how it's kind of leaving out some of the strands of hair. That's okay. It's not really that critical that we get it perfect. You could use the bracket keys to resize the brush. The left bracket key makes it smaller, and the right bracket key makes it bigger. And then we come through here and we just make sure that we got pretty much his hair masked out. Now we want to mask out his eyebrows because we don't want any of the skin softening effects to be done to his eyebrows. So we're going to mask those out. Again, we can make the brush smaller with the left bracket key. All right. Now we have some part of his neck here that is considered not skin. So we're going to undo that by going up to the mode, and we're going to put add to skin. We're going to get a little bigger of a brush, and we're just going to come in here and make sure that On1 knows that that is in fact skin. All right, there's a little bit of hair down there. Maybe if I want to be a little bit extra critical about it, I could come down in here and get that edge there. Okay, that's good enough for the sake of this presentation. So we have all the parts that aren't skin masked out. And then again, the mask is this little button right here, and you could turn it on and off with that button there. So we did good there. We'll go back to adjust points. Now, the next step I suggest you do is you do any adjustments that you might do with either the perfect eraser or the retouch brush. So we'll start with the perfect eraser. This is the same perfect eraser that's in On1 Enhance. And we're going to come in and you want to get any of the larger blemishes or freckles and things like that you want to remove. So you just make the brush a little bigger than the blemish or freckle, and you just click once with your mouse and it should get rid of it pretty easily. So you just want to kind of quickly go through and try to um, just quickly remove or soften any of these blemishes, freckles, um, moles that you don't think make up the actual character of the person. You might want to remove, like Cindy Crawford, you're not going to remove her mole on her face, right? So, and you could draw with this too. You don't have to just click down once. So if there's like a scratch on his face or something like that, you could actually draw with it like that, and it will get rid of it. So we could go through and do all these little blemishes. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'd say that is good enough. The next thing below it is the retouch brush. Now, by default, when you use the retouch brush, the opacity will be at 100. I strongly suggest that you do not use the retouch brush with an opacity of 100. It will really, really soften things. So let's say I want to get this like brow line or this furrow line out of his head here. And if I go across, it just looks too much, just too much. So to undo anything, just hit Command Z if you have a Mac, Control Z if you have a PC. That Z is in Z. So what I strongly suggest you do is you pull opacity way down to maybe 40, 30 to 40 in there somewhere. And it is cumulative, so you could paint a couple times on something and really reduce the line that way. So if I want to just soften this line, not actually obliterate the line, that's what we would do. And you could come through. And if you don't like, again, the effect it's giving, don't forget to hit Control or Command Z. So mainly, a lot of times you want to do this under someone's eye. Now, Joe's a young guy. I think he was, I just took this picture not too long ago. He just turned 18, so he might have been 17 when this picture was taken. So he doesn't have a lot of lines. Someday when he has kids, he'll have a lot more age lines. So So that's, good enough. That shows you how to use the brush. So again, it's cumulative. Keep the opacity relatively low, and you could paint it multiple times to really layer the effect a little better. Now, go back to the faces mode here. One thing up here, if you want to come back and find a face, you could click right there again and then go back into the face. But we'll go back to the faces mode here. All right, now we have these adjustments on the right, and really the bread and butter of the plugin. The first section is skin retouching. This is the actual retouching of the skin. And we have 5 different sliders. The first one, blemishes, does what it says. It will reduce and soften the blemishes. Smoothing will smooth the skin. Smoothing, from what I found, has the strongest effect, and I'll show you in a minute. Shine, Joe doesn't have any shine on his face, but quite often when you take someone's picture, they have shine on their face, and shine does a great job of reducing the shine on the face. Now, shadows, this image here, I shot it with clamshell lighting, so that purposely doesn't have any strong shadows with that type of lighting, and I added a hair light, so there's really not a lot of strong shadows on his face, but if there were and you wanted to soften those shadows, that's what you would do with that slider there. And evenness, that's the color variance. So if someone has, like, blotchy skin or something like that, this evenness slider will take care of that. Now the blemishes is a little more subtle than you might think. If I turn it up to 100, it it softens. It does a pretty good job. If I turn it down to 0, you can see comes back all the little marks on his face and things like that. The default position is right in the middle at 50. Most of the time I found that it works great at 50 and I leave it there. If you're doing a beauty shot shooting, beauty shot with a woman, you may want to have this slightly higher. Generally speaking, beauty shots, the skin is perfect, beyond perfect, not realistic. And that's something you would do with this blemishes slider. Now the smoothing slider is, to me, it's the blurriness slider. That's what I call it. So if I go all the way up, you can see how it really blurs out his skin, obliterates even the pores on his skin. So this one, I prefer to keep lower. The default position is 20, and by the way, if you hit to get the default settings, just double click on the name. So if you have smoothing up to 100 and you want to put it back to its default position, just double click on smoothing, the word smoothing, and it will return it to its default position. Typically, I found that works great for men and women. Again, Joe doesn't have shine on his face, but you would just keep inching this slider up until the the shine is reduced. Shadows, no deep shadows. Again, though, if you move that slider up, you would reduce any of the deep shadows on his face. Evenness, again, that's the color variance in his face. He doesn't really have any color variance in his face, but if he did, you would just move that up and just keep sampling it, looking at it and get it to where you like it. Face only, that means it's only going to adjust the skin, basically. It's not going to do his hair or anything like that. And we don't want it to do his hair, so typically you would always have that checked. Also, if his arms were showing and things like that, it won't affect his arms. Um, Color correction. This one is by default it's clicked on, but the amount is all the way down, so you don't see really any of the effect. So basically, if you want to give Joe a tan, you would turn amount up, and it really could be strong. I mean, you wait for it to render. Now it's not doing it. Let's turn it off and turn it on. Well, believe me, I don't know why it's not actually doing it, because typically it's a super strong effect. Hmm. Ah, there it goes. All of a sudden it started working. So, sometimes you have to hit reset, but that's what I mean by this super strong effect. So, um, you know, basically you'd have to turn the amount slider and the warmth slider and work them in conjunction with each other to get the look you want. But before you adjust any of these sliders, go down to ethnicity first and make sure that you have the right ethnicity for the person you're adjusting the portrait for. It has average, I'm not sure who that is. We have white, black, Latino, Asian or Indian, and Middle Eastern. So just pick the correct ethnicity first, then come up here and start moving around the sliders. Again, the amount slider and the warmth slider you should kind of use in conjunction. What you might want to do is turn amount way up and then get the warmth around where you like the shading of it and then bring the amount slider down. Color shift is between red and green. You can make it more green or more red, depending, um, whatever your tastes are. Usually, typically, I don't mess much with this because, if someone was really, really, really pasty white and they complained about it during their portrait shoot that they're pasty white, I might try to warm their skin a little bit, but I've never really encountered that. So that might be the only time I really mess with color correction. Now, eyes and mouth are important. It's very simple adjustments though. The whitening of the eyes is the actual eye white. And you got to be really careful you don't overdo this because it just looks so fake if you go too much. So typically, I like to leave this really very low. That's my style for my portraiture, is I don't turn whitening up too high. Now, there are some cases where somebody might have red eyes and things like that, so it might have to go a little higher. And you can see Joe has some veins in here. Typically, I would get rid of those in Photoshop, but actually sent this image as is. There was no adjustments done to this at all. It's right out of camera is what you're seeing. So no adjustments done at all. So typically, again, I'll keep whitening low. If you double click on the word, the default is 50. To me, that's just much too high. So maybe around 6. All right. Now, detail itself, the detail is his eyes, his irises. We could make them alien by turning it way up, or just normal Joe. So we want somewhere a little more enhanced from normal Joe, maybe like that. And if he had red eye, we'd click here, and that would reduce any red eye in his reds. Now, the mouth sliders are, the whitening again is for the teeth. Now, since his teeth aren't showing, this one's all the way down. The vibrance is basically how red are his lips, and it's a real subtle adjustment. Usually, to tell you the truth, I turn that way up. I like the lips to be healthy looking, red looking, so I'll turn that way up. You may not need that, or they may have a certain color lipstick on, and you don't want, you don't, that's already very colorful, and you don't want to enhance the color beyond what the lipstick is showing. So you might not want that vibrance up too high. So that's really it. We really adjusted this portrait. There's before and there's after, before, after. Now we click apply and it will now create a new layer because we went from the automate menu that is under the automate function that is under the file menu, and you can see that it has its own layer on one portrait, and there is the before, after, before, after. So I think it does a great job. It's really a cool plugin, I think. Now again, I will do another video in episode 10, and we'll work on a group of people, and I'll show you how you could switch between faces and do specific adjustments for each face. So look for that in about a week. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon.